You actually took on Pedro Morales a couple of times for the Intercontinental Championship, but also you challenged once for Bob Backlund's heavyweight gold. You've brought up Bob Backlund before, and you said he was just like the Energizer Bunny. But how do you think he was doing as champion? Because he was champion for 5 years, over 5 years, drawing the crowds in. He has some detractors, but what do you make of Bob?
Well, yeah, number one, probably what you read, I'd like to say that was true, but even on the last show that I was on, those were not actual championship matches. I did work with those individuals many times, and when I was doing the executioner, it was in the beginning, and even down towards the end, they would bring me in as the executioner, maybe back in my area, and I did work with Backlund in high school for the championship, and Bob was a great guy to work with. As I say, him having the experience and so forth, I would listen to him and he'd allow me to do what I had to do and so forth. And we would have a good match. I'm not going to say they were always getting up doing high spots. But working with Bob was always great. And, what a kind individual he was, because, back in the dressing room, he would thank me and offer to buy dinner for me and my wife. So he'd want to hand me $50. I said, no, Bob. I said, no, come on, man. I can't take that from you. I'm getting paid. I mean, it was just an honor to work with you. Ron, take it. 2 or 3 times he gave me a $50 bill to go out and have dinner for putting him over.
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy Bob was, and Pedro Morales, another great guy. I mean, he was probably the one guy I worked with the most on TV. And I even said to myself, I said, boy, again, because, you're working on TV, it was a lot of the same thing over and over when you work with certain individuals. You'd get your heat on Pedro, and then he'd make his comeback, and he'd either give you the Boston Crab or the backbreaker and so forth. But Pedro was a very generous guy, and he remembered that, because when we would work in house shows, he really, really would give me an opportunity. I mean, he'd tell me, throw me over the top ropes, come out and get me, and so forth. And that's being very generous, And I have to say, one time, the very best match I ever had with Pedro, and we called him Pete back in the dressing room, was at the Hartford Civic Center, and I was the executioner that night, and I was working against him. And I know Vince was there that night because, the office is right in that area. And it happened to be, and all because of Pedro Morales, that he allowed me to work with him. It was one of the best matches there that night. Maybe it was the best match of the night. I don't want to take away from the big names at the time, because the people were into it. I came back to the dressing room. Everybody was saying, great. Even Fuji. Great match, man.
As he was offering you a dog turd. Great match. Do you want
one? One of his brownies. Yeah, and even Vince came back and gave me like a good nod. And it all comes down to is who you're working with. Are they going to help you out, make you look good, make you and Pedro was a great guy, and I paid tribute to him on my website. I've got a match with him as the executioner in the Philadelphia Spectrum. And matter of fact, I will be adding some stuff in a couple of weeks with a match, a rare match where Pedro is the Intercontinental Champion. Attack him right from the beginning. So I'll be putting that on in a couple of weeks. Great guy.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be putting your website at the bottom of this so everybody will know where to go as well. And because I've mentioned the the two longest reigning WWF champions, Pedro Morales and Bob Backlund of that era, how could I not mention Bruno? Bruno was still in the company when you joined in 1980, but then he would leave soon afterwards, and then he'd come in part-time here and there. Did you have any interactions with Bruno?
Oh, man, I did. Yeah, Bruno. As I say, my one of my top 3 or 4 favorite wrestlers' names in the business, because Bruno portrayed the wrestler. Never came in with a jacket. Okay, always looked like the wrestler, and that's what you had to love. But when he left, and as I say, when Vince let me go at the end of 1981, I went to work for Kowalski, and they merged where they started doing the TV tapings in Allentown at the it's a Dorney Park, okay? And at the time, a lot of us guys were coming to work for Bruno, and they were putting me over pretty much. And I was tagging up with a guy named Hans Schroeder, if that rings a bell. But one night as heels, he turned on me and busted me open in the ring, and so that's who they were playing, me against him, pretty much. And you know, they had the other main events and so forth going on. And one night, you know, as I said, I talked to Bruno many times, but Bruno was going to interview me on the TV, and he interviewed me, and he wasn't happy with, you know, I was kind of sounding bummed out and so forth, because that's what I wanted to sound like. You know, here he is, Sean Schroeder, you know, I looked at him as a brother to get my, you know, get my back when I need him and so forth. And here he turns on me and so forth. So after that, Bruno says, you need to get a little bit more fired up. So the next TV taping, I got fired up. And Bruno says, oh, a lot better, man, a lot better, you know, but you know, I've asked Bruno for advice many times too. I have to say that as one guy asked for some advice, Bruno. And you know, when we both left in 1982, it's a funny thing. We both went back to Vince at the same time, because that was starting to sour. The pay was not getting as good. It seemed like it wore off, and it just couldn't compete. Everybody thought that was going to compete against the WWF.
This
Well,
is Killer
I knew it
Kowalski's
wasn't.
IWF you're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it became the International Wrestling when they
Yeah, yeah.
merged. And so it wasn't going that way. I mean, they brought in Johnny and Jerry Valiant, Larry Zbyszko was in there, and then David Sammartino. And I gave Vince a call, and I said, man, I said, Vince, you know, I'd like to come back to work for you. He said, well, look, call my father. He's in Florida. And I called up, and I said, Mr. McMahon, I said, Ron Shaw, I said, I'd love to come back to work for you. And to give you an idea how this guy is, he says, well, you know, he goes, we got a full roster. But you know what, Ron? He goes, come on back up to the next taping. And boom, there I go. I went working from 84 through 87 pretty much.
Mm.
And Bruno came back at the same time. So, you know, they were coming back because, you know, I think there was a lawsuit Bruno had against Vince, and they wanted to, you know, squash that. So they brought him back as color commentator, and then, you know, brought his kid in, David, and went on from there.